Coming to you from deep in the Ozarks and Ridge Runner Studios. This is the Nursing Underground, a podcast that will help clear the white noise in medicine and politics and help you define the forest from the trees. Here is your host, David Big Dave Ezel. Welcome to the Nursing Underground.
Hey everybody, how are y'all doing this evening? This is Big Dave. I'm your host for the Nursing Underground. I'm glad to be back. I have been out for well over a month with the upper respiratory infection, sinus infection, RSV, COVID, you call it whatever you want to call it. I never lost my taste or smell, so we know what it wasn't. I have been watching the conspiracy theories that I've had several of these episodes taken down on other platforms, and I have been watching all of my conspiracy theories, as they called it in the beginning, come true, much like everybody else has in this country. And now that they are starting to turn on Fauci, it is about to get very, very, very interesting. The government, of course, is to be without keeping their hands out of our health care. They have not learned anything over the last 2 years, and I doubt they will. But before we go any further, I'm glad to have our host back. She does wonderful work. It's Amy at Rocking Magnolia Customs.
Do you have a friend or family member you're having trouble buying a gift for? You just can't find the right gift for the person who has everything? Then go to Rockin' Magnolia Customs, a place where you can pick out and design the perfect gift for that special someone. That's rockinmagnoliacustoms.com or find them on Facebook at Rockin' Magnolia Customs.
And y'all give Amy a follow at Rocking Magnolia Customs. There's no G in Rockham, and custom is always spelled with a K. This past omnibus bill that they passed, because, they don't know how to budget anymore, and you'd figure with the high salaries that we pay the government, they would know how to budget, but they don't. They're just as ignorant as the education system that they've created for us. An omnibus bill they passed was a little act in there called the NOPAIN Act. Basically, the rundown on all of it is there no opioids after surgery. I forget if it's 2023 or 2025. They want you to have non-opioid interventions for pain. It eliminates the DEA X waiver, which limited the amount of Suboxone that could be prescribed per month per doctor that did pain and or addiction. It limited the amount of people they could write scripts for. The addiction doctors with this No Pain Act can now write as much Suboxone as they want. The doctors in this country, in order to prescribe in 2023, will have to take an 8-hour class just to be able to write NARC scripts. And I wonder why it's so important that they pass this in the middle of an omnibus bill. I mean, they were talking about keeping the government open, but yet there was a little bit about the government. We reached debt ceiling yesterday. The government, I don't know why they keep determining that they need to keep their hands in our health care, because it's ignorant. They don't know what they're doing. They haven't done it. It's not any better now than it was when they passed the ACA. As a matter of fact, I would say that it's worse. They are the cause of a lot of the failures in healthcare. I've talked about on this podcast that they are in the midst of attempting to collapse the government. The government is attempting to collapse healthcare. That's the end of the day. That's what they're doing. You can sit there and argue with me and say that they're not. You would be wrong. They have the perfect setup going right now. Absolutely the perfect setup going right now. And they keep coming up with more and more and more. They tried to get you under a mandate. All of them have fallen apart except for the CMS mandate. That's the ones that runs long-term care nursing homes, which in the beginning, everyone said that it was just a way to take out the old people, and yet they are still in power over the old people. They're still making these old people get these shots. They're still making these old people get these boosters. They're still making the people that work in these nursing homes, they're trying to enforce them to get the shots. It's pure and simple. It's bullshit's what it is. I call bullshit. It is a control mechanism in order to keep you there. If you don't want to take the shot, then you can just quit, and that's what people are doing. The hospitals don't have the mandate anymore. That's because they're under more than one area. They're under more than just CMS, so their reach from CMS is limited in the acute care setting. But in the long-term care setting and long-term rehabilitation centers and long-term acute care centers, they are controlling what we can and cannot do. The other day, they brought out this thing, well, if you do this, you have to wear this mask. And if you have this little deal, you have to wear this mask. Hey, why are we wearing masks at all? Is it so that you can introduce a new vaccine set? Because that's what they're doing. The companies that won't answer questions know that this 10-month push was BS. So now, because we've worn the mask for 2 years, because as anybody that knows how immunizations work, when you create an immunization to suppress something, it unsuppresses another. And what's happened and what we've seen and what we have is a rise in adult respiratory syncytial viruses, RSV. Yes, it's supposed to be a child's, but no, it's not. You'll never guess what these immunization companies have being tested to be pushed out and rolled out right now. Forgive it's Moderna, Pfizer. I think it's Pfizer, has 8 that they're testing. 8 immunizations for adult RSV. That's kind of convenient, isn't it? The same thing with the companies that pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed to have corn syrup put in the food so they could push and push and push and push all these different insulins. And now you've got Ozempic out there that causes weight loss, controls diabetes also, but it induces weight loss also. And you got people going for that for weight loss because it's a quick, easy fix. Nobody wants to work at losing weight. You know, I was always told if you want to lose weight, quit eating so damn much. Put a little push away instead of a push up. Push away from the table and get down the floor and do a push up, do a setup. And you can lose the weight and lose the inches. And I'm not talking about the people that have problems and cannot. I'm not talking about the people that have bad hearts and cannot. But I can promise you this, the people that's taking these immunizations are going to have bad hearts if they don't die from the clot, if they don't die from a PE, if they don't die from other side effects that we haven't seen yet. Where does all of it go? Why are we still allowing the government to stay inside of our health care? They don't know what they're doing with money. Why do we think they know what they're doing with health? They don't know what they're doing with rules and regulations. So why do you think we know what to do with the health? The only thing they know about money is to vote themselves a raise every time. They know how to do their trading inside the walls of our Congress that we elected them to. And they buy this stock and that stock because they know their rules are fixing to affect this stock and that stock. Or they're either 535 of the best investors, the best foreseers of stocks that we probably need to put all of them to work on Wall Street instead of DC. I could go on and on and on and on, and it won't stop. It's never going to stop as long as we allow them to keep doing it. So they passed this NOPAIN Act, and if you look at the current situation of what's going on, and then you look at this NOPAIN Act, and then you see what people are dying from on the streets. If the doctors don't go and take this 8-hour class, they're not going to have to write NARCs. They can't. That's a lot of them are going to look at it and say, that's one less responsibility I have to do. I don't have to write the NARCs if I don't go take the course. And they're not going to be able to prescribe the Norcos and prescribe the Percocets. So what does it do? It drives people to go get drugs off the street. Ugly fact, but true fact. And they're going to go out there, instead of getting a Percocet, they're going to get a pressed blue tablet of fentanyl. They're going to take one and they're going to die. It's just another way for them to circumvent the system and get the medication that they have to have, because we all know, everybody in the field knows, it takes 3 doses before you become addicted to opioids. If you're already predisposed with an addictive personality, you're going to be addicted. If you're not, you're going to be okay. Fortunately for me, I'm allergic to opioids and I'm allergic to anesthesia. There's very few things I can take. I don't like the way they make me feel anyway. And the only one that ever helped me with any kind of pain, they took off the market years ago. So I have to take all these anti-inflammatory medications that work for 45 minutes to an hour and a half when they start to work, and then it's over with. And then I start having arthritis pain again. As most of y'all know, I have Graves' disease. Graves' disease is one of the 5 autoimmune disorders, all in one genetic malformation. Graves' disease, rheumatoid arthritis, that set, lupus, that set, fibromyalgia. That set of things all linked to the same genetic malformation within the code. And everybody's watched and read enough about the mRNA and these vaccines that they know. And if you're driving folks to the street and you're still doing exactly what people in these conspiracy theories thought all this was to begin with, was it's a population control mechanism. That sounds like a cheap way out, but it just appears that way. It may not be true. Probably is not true to the most of them, but they're unaware of the bigger picture, or they're just, politicians and they're ignorant. I go for the latter because they're kind of stupid. Right? I mean, they're smart people, but they're kind of stupid. They're sheep and they're told what to do. They're told what to vote for. They're told who to vote for. We watched the biggest display of bullshit for the Speaker of the House elections. Nurses all over the country were just laughing at them the whole time. When the issues with the mRNA vaccine came out, nurses were the first one to call bullshit. Why would you put something in your body that changes your DNA? And everybody told us we were stupid. No, it's messenger RNA, and it tells the DNA what to block so you can be protected from that's changing your DNA. I don't care how you define it. I don't care how you reword it. And I don't care what you say about it. That's what it is. Messenger RNA is messenger RNA. It doesn't matter if it's introduced through immunization or it's naturally occurring in your body, which it is, and it tells your DNA what to build and where to build it. Messenger RNA takes that information and switches it around, and they say, oh, it boosts your immune system. That's only proteins it does. Well, no, it changes your protein pattern. And y'all can go look all this up. It's online, ready, available for research if it's what you want to do. This NOPAIN Act is bullshit. It was a way a lobbyist somewhere told them that that's what they needed to do. They've been trying to pass this for a while. I don't agree with the AMA too much about stuff because they're woke, and we need to get woke out of the healthcare field, woke out of medicine, and woke out of nursing. Nobody gives a shit about your pronouns if you're having a heart attack. Nobody gives a shit about your sexual orientation if you're having a stroke. That's pure and simple fact. Then they want to put woke in medicine. Now they're pushing to have these children basically have their sexual organs removed because they think they feel like they're a boy at 8 years old and they're a girl. Really, that's how they were born. But let's go ahead and give them a hysterectomy so they won't have to live with that. Well, I've known plenty of little girls that I grew up with when I was a kid. They were tomboys, and then they grew out to be perfectly beautiful people. They didn't care anything about being a boy. They were much, much, much a woman. But because they think at 6 years old, they all think this is right. It's what's going on out there. It's what it is, what it is. Not my viewpoint. I don't care. I know that there are people out there that have sexual identity crisis. I know there are people out there with sexual identity disorders. I know they exist. I know it's probably, I worked in peds and developmental pediatrics for 5 years. I definitely understand the psychological trip there is on that. I get it. I've watched them unalive themselves. I've watched them cut and mutilate themselves just to get some relief. It is a horrible situation, and it needs to be dealt with in a psychological manner to begin with. Everything else, they can make that decision when they turn 18. If they want to get their stuff cut up and cut off, then that's their problem. That's their choice. And that's where we say, okay, well, you're 17 years old. If you think that's what you want to do, we can have you prepped and ready to go and get your tallywhacker cut off when you turn 18. Because that's what they choose to do, then they can do it. But don't come in there and tell these children that it's okay to do it. They don't know yet. They haven't been there yet. They don't get it yet. Most of y'all know that I host another podcast called The Gray State Revolution. It too will be kicking off in the next week with the new season. I've been way behind. Of course, like I said earlier, I've been really sick. But
Hey, do you want to join the revolution against tyranny? In the Gray State, you can learn how our forefathers' revolution began and how they changed their future and ours. Here you will learn if this is the direction of our country now. Join Big Dave on the Gray State Revolution podcast to find out. Available on Apple, iHeart, and Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts.
And I will be having a new episode of that next week on the Gray State Revolution. If you have a recommendation for which forefather speech you would like to hear reenacted, that's what I'm going to do in that podcast now. I think it's as important now to modernize the speeches from the foundation of our country, give them a modern twist, and let's see how well they fit and how timeless our forefathers' ideals were. Usually around 240, 250 years, most countries start failing because of social issues. That's where we're at right now, and if we don't get a hold of something, if we don't start fixing this stuff and getting it out of the way, we're going to be a foregone idea, and people will be reading about how great we used to be in the history books. But going back to what we were talking about before, the self-mutilation, the mutilation of the genitalia, all of that is being pushed by certain people in this government. We watch them parade around. We have watched the gay population against grooming be villainized, and they should not be. You may or may not agree with their sexual orientation, but one thing you should agree with, it doesn't matter who it is that they don't agree with grooming in the classroom, and you should not either. These are children. Let them be children until they're not children anymore. You give them time to get up to be an age-specific group, and they can then make the decision of what they want to do with their lives and do with their bodies. You don't get to make the choice for them. Don't get to hide behind, oh, well, they need to know how to treat people nice. Just tell them to be nice to everybody. If they're not, call them out on it and tell them to be nice to everybody after that. So that's not hard. That's actually the easy part. Don't sit there and tell them, well, you need to be nice to them because they identify as this and they think this. And no, it's a parent's responsibility to teach their children in their home about sexual orientation, how sex works, etc., etc., etc. Now, nurses were vilified at the beginning of this pandemic, and that's what I call it, because the more the stuff comes out, the more that you see that it was planned. And yes, they were all in on it, including the previous administration. If they weren't, they wouldn't still be building this contraption outside our White House. It started under Trump, and it's going on now, and you've got to wonder what it is, what it's about, and what it's doing. If you've got an answer for that, you can email my show at ridgerunnerstudios@protonmail.com. That's ridgerunnerstudios@protonmail.com. If you have a show idea and you'd like to present it, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, drop me an email, give me a line, tell me what you want to talk about, and we will work it into the show. This next week, I will be recording another podcast with Lambo called A Little Extra Lambo Podcast. It's out of the Northeast in Washington State. I will be on there with another fellow nurse, and we're going to be discussing long-term care, how this immunization has affected long-term care, where we'll be discussing how they're using it to collapse the healthcare industry so they can do a total takeover of the healthcare industry. So if you'd like to listen in, I'll give you future advertisements on when it's coming out on my TikTok page at the Gray State Mafia, or Justice Gray, JUSTAS _Gray, GREY, or Wilson Gray 2.1. Those are all my pages on TikTok. You will hear an ad for it on Spotify. You'll also hear it on my Gray State Mafia podcast, which is a Spotify exclusive, where I just go on a rant for 30 minutes a week. I don't know where they think we were stupid. I don't know where they think that nursing in the healthcare industry was weak. People quit their jobs because of the mandates. People quit falling in line. I can tell you right now, there's not a shortage of nurses out there. There's plenty of nurses. There's just not enough nurses willing to put up with the bullshit and least amount of pay to do what we're asked to do or mandated to do by the government. There are enough nurses out there to get the job done. There are enough nurses out there to have every bed in every hospital open. The problem is, as long as healthcare is a for-profit industry, as long as the bottom line is the only thing that matters, as long as the government and these representatives can launder their money through their representatives and through their senators to keep their facilities open, you're going to have the bullshit you've got now. I think all healthcare industry should be nonprofit, not for-profit or nonprofit. I think that every bit of profit that they make should be sunk into employee pay. I think it's time that you start paying RNs and LPNs and LVNs and APRNs and CNAs and housekeepers and dietary workers and maintenance guys, everything it takes to make a hospital run its real course. Because let's face it, folks, what's the first word that you hear in a nursing home? Because you can't run a nursing home without nurses. And if you don't start paying your nurses, you're going to lose your building. And that may be just fine with you, but it may not be fine for the community. And it may not be fine for grandma who's laid up in a bed, depending on their local community nursing home to take care of them in the end. But one thing we know for sure, the conglomerates, you have no clue. You don't care what those people in those beds think. You don't care that maybe their family is poor and they don't have the transportation to get to the next town, but they do have transportation where they can be carried up the block to see Mama in the local nursing home. That's where we're at. We've been going there that way for years, but this year seems to be the end of last year and the rest of this year. They're expecting another 300 nursing homes to close this year. They didn't quite reach the 440 they was expecting to reach last year. They got real close. We lost a ton of beds in the nursing home sector. We've lost a ton of beds in the acute care sector in hospitals, not because the beds are gone, but because there's not enough staff to open the beds so the people can be taken care of. Your nursing home's closed, so there's nowhere to discharge the ones that have debilitating issues, strokes, heart attacks, and need cardiac rehab, et cetera, et cetera. There's no local long-term care or long-term acute care or long-term rehab facility for them to go to get their rehabilitation so they can go back home. We're steadily falling. It's going to continue to fall. It's going to continue to fall until somebody in D.C. stands up for the people in their district, stands up for the constituents that put them in office. Because as it stands right now, unless they're going to make a little profit on it, they're not going to do anything but keep the status quo. Now, if there's any representative or senator that would like to discuss this, I'm fully open to have a discussion with you. You can leave all your information on my email at ridgerunnerstudios@protonmail.com. I have been watching a particular situation develop. I will have more on it next week. It's going to come out this week. I've been just steadily watching to see which way we're going to go with it. It should be working towards the public in their favor, but I think they'll find a way to twist it. But we'll see how it goes, and I'll report on that next week. Normally I go an hour on this podcast, but I'm just trying to get back into the habit. Like I said, I've been sick. I apologize for the weeks of shows that's not been out there. I will be on a little extra Lambo. We'll be recording this Tuesday, and I think it'll be out Friday next week or the week after. I will let you know when I will be on air with little extra Lambo. I'm looking forward to that. You can go catch me on a previous episode of Renegade Podcast on Spotify and Anchor FM called The Renegade's Rant. I was the 1 hour guest special with him. Was a wonderful show. It was a great show. Really enjoyed it. And the Kentucky Renegade, man, I appreciate you and everything you do. We're going to work on a parody podcast together related to one of my TikTok pages. If you want to go keep up with what's going on in politics and the world and the perspective of a patriot, come to my Justice Elf Gray page. You can come to my lives. We're live every night. We have a TikTok after dark. Some of the major creators on the app pop in and out. You'll be able to just talk with them. If you follow anybody on TikTok, you should know Freedom Stick, or on Instagram, he pops into our lives. The Constitutionalist, Defiance Daddy, Little Scotty, all of those guys come into our rooms and we have just a good time. We break away from the politics and we just have fun with each other. And then also raise money to help people get their ends meet. Everybody's having a hard time and we completely understand it. This is Big Dave from Ridge Runner Studios in Northeast Arkansas, home of the Spring River, and you have been listening to the Nursing Underground.
You have been listening to the Healthcare Underground, a podcast dedicated to informing you of the white noise in politics and healthcare and helping you to redefine the trees in the forest. Join Big Dave again next week in the Healthcare Underground from Ridge Runner Studios.